Okay, let me go back to my screen share. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is put into chat a link. Obviously, I mean, hopefully you don't watch it right now, but you could click it so that you could save it. That way it would open up. But here's a YouTube video that talks about our group, talks a little bit about my background, and also talks about the group and what the group is about. I'll be super brief right now and just say that I've had many people that have had an impact in my life. However, in relationship to wealth, money and wealth, I would say there are two people, and they're actually on kind of different ends of the spectrum, that have had a big impact in my life that I've had the opportunity to work together with. One is a gentleman by the name of Robert Kiyosaki. You might know him if you've ever heard of or read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or the game Cash Flow. So I've had the opportunity to work with Robert and his team directly. I was an advisor with them many years ago. And in that capacity of advising, I also learned a lot, and I got to see the inside scoop on what was going on over at the Rich Dad companies, and had that opportunity to interact with Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter on a regular basis and learned a lot from them. So big impact in my life from that opportunity. The second one, on a different end of the spectrum, however, a very good businessman himself, is I've had the opportunity to be coached and trained by a gentleman by the name of Bob Proctor. If you don't know who Bob Proctor is, maybe you've seen a book called You're Born Rich, or you've seen a movie and or read the book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And Bob is someone who, like I said, he's been a mentor and coach of mine. And I was even asked at a point in time to be a coach and facilitator for some of his programs. However, now I do what I do independently, but I still have interaction with Bob and his team and lots of friends that I met over there. So anyhow, the next thing I wanted to share with you real quick is we have a Facebook group that coincides with this. And why am I sharing this with you? This is a way you guys can interact with each other if you like. It's also where I will, after we've had, days like today. So we do this Monday through Friday, currently 10 a.m. Pacific time. So whatever time that is your time, for about 45 minutes. Well, what I'm going to be doing and have been doing is posting the recordings in this group. So feel free to come join the group. It has the same name as the meetup. And let's see if I can get chat pulled up here for a second and drop the link to the group here so you can request to join more easily. And then the next thing that I want to go ahead and do is I want to bring up a book that we started on a couple days ago. Some of us have, so we've been going not for a long time. We just got things going a few days ago with these meetup groups, just got them posted in Meetup, and Meetup just barely put it out there that we exist. But we have had enough time to have a couple different meetings together, and we'll continue to grow as we do this. But what I want to share with you is something that we're in the process of going through and discussing and studying right now. It is a book. It's a book you could easily find on Amazon. You can find a paperback copy at a bookstore, Amazon, or you can go get it on Kindle. It's called The Science of Getting Rich. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may have no idea about it. It was written a long time ago, and it was published in 1910 by a gentleman named Wallace Wattles. Yes, that is kind of a funny name, but that is his name. And this particular book has had a big impact on my life, and an impact on Bob Proctor's life, an impact on Rhonda Byrne's life. However, I don't know if Robert Kiyosaki has ever read it or not. I went to a seminar taught by one of Bob Proctor's coaches many years ago, and it was around the science of getting rich. And then I was giving some additional material to self-study, and that had such an impact on me that at the time my income was $5,000 to $6,000 a month at a job. And within 3 months of studying, going to that seminar and studying the additional material diligently and applying it, not just studying it, but actually acting on what I was learning, went ahead and ended up leaving that job and starting a business of my own. And over the following 8 months of the year, averaged $50,000 a month in income. So my income multiplied by nearly 10 times as a result of learning different principles, but also as a result of reprogramming my mind to accept what I was being taught. I found that no matter what it is that somebody does, if your mind is not accepting the idea that money is a good thing and that being rich is a good thing, you are going to self-sabotage. So what happened for me here is I had been self-sabotaging for years and years and years. However, I was able to have that kind of breakthrough, and this was some of the material I was exposed to, so I thought I would share it with you guys. So that's why we're doing this. And if you would like a free copy of it, all I did is I Googled Science of Getting Rich and then PDF. Interestingly enough, one of the first things that came up when I did that was Rhonda Byrne's website, the one who created the movie The Secret and the book The Secret. I'm going to try and post a link here into chat. Let's see if that'll work. And you can either do what I did, Google it, or you can click on that particular link and hopefully it'll bring you to this copy that we're working with right now of The Science of Getting Rich. So you can have it for free. I put the free copy on here for myself so that we would be on the same page while we're doing this. So, and we happen to be on, so we're on the chapter that's titled The First Principle in the Science of Getting Rich. In this particular PDF, it is page number 18. So I'm going to read some of this right now, possibly add some commentary as we go along. And then what I like to do is leave some time at the end before we're done being together to have some kind of question and answers and feedback and things like that, so that we can do what we can. Yes, I am a coach around law of attraction. My specialty is in helping people have breakthroughs around money and wealth. However, I know that every time I listen to others, I'd say every time, but when we're having these types of discussions around the laws of the universe and how the law of attraction works, I always gain by listening. Some people say, why are you doing this? And why are you doing this for free? I'll be honest with you, I'm doing it for free because it keeps me engaged in studying and I learn from you guys. The other thing is, from time to time, some of you guys might need or want help, and you might reach out and say, hey, Kevin, you know what? Let's talk about this coaching thing and see if it's a good fit for us. So, but whether you choose to do any of that or not doesn't matter. We'll still be here doing this. All right. The first principle in the Science of Getting Rich. Again, remember, it was published in 1910. So you will, some of the words will be a little different, the way things are phrased. And also a lot of times things are done in the male instead of female, when he's talking to others, but he means everybody. The first principle in the Science of Getting Rich. And by the way, another thing, interrupting myself, but you probably do want to go back to the previous chapters. The very first part of this book, what Wallace Wattles is essentially trying to do is help all of us understand that having money is a good thing and being wealthy is a good thing. Now, hopefully that's how you guys feel. Hopefully that's why you joined this group in the first place. But whether that's how you feel or not, if you are not exactly where you want to be financially, then you do have programming like everybody that is limiting you. The other thing too is sometimes we break out of one place and then we hit a new ceiling and we get stuck. I've worked with lots of people as a consultant, as a business consultant, and also as a coach, funny enough, a coach to people that were even wealthier and doing much better than I was, like Sharon Lechter, for instance. I've helped her and Robert Kiyosaki grow their business. I've helped Bob Proctor grow his business. But I've learned probably way more from them than they've learned from me, but it's been a fair exchange because everybody grew in that situation. But what I found is that everybody out there needs somebody in their life, whether it's somebody they hire or whether it is somebody that they are close enough to that person's there for them on a regular basis. But we need people out there that can see things that we don't see, and a lot of times point out to us things that we already know, but we have our own blind spots. But I recommend that you go back and get a copy of the book and read the first few chapters. We're only on chapter 3. Add a preface in there. We're really on like number 4 or 5. So, thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought of form in the substance produces the form. By the way, if you guys are chatting, that's fine. Just don't expect me to be looking at chatting while I'm reading at the same time, because that'll be a little bit difficult to do. And if any of you are off of mute, just check and make sure that you are, so we don't get background from you for the moment. You'll have your opportunity to talk in a little bit. Original substance moves according to its thoughts. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought in original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout formless substance, and the thinking stuff moving according to that thought took the form of systems of planets and maintains that form. Thinking substance takes the form of its thought and moves according to the thought. Holding the idea of a circling system of suns and worlds, it takes the form of these bodies and moves them as it thinks. Thinking the form of a slow-growing oak tree, it moves accordingly and produces the tree. Those centuries may be required to do the work. In creating, the formless seems to move according to the lines of motion it has established. The thought of an oak tree does not cause the instant formation of a full-grown tree, but it does start in motion the forces which will produce the tree along established lines of growth. Every thought of form held in thinking substance causes the creation of the form, but always, or at least generally, along lines of growth and action already established. The thought of a house of a certain construction, if it were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause the turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce into such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. And if there were no existing channels through which the creative energy could work, then the house would be formed directly from primal substance, without waiting for the slow process of the organic and inorganic world. No thought of form can be impressed upon original substance without causing the creation of the form. Okay, and we'll get deeper into this because it's not just throwing one thought out there for a second and it just poof, shows up like that. So there's more depth to this. But if you take a particular thought and it is a focused thought, and you learn how to follow the laws of the universe and how they operate, thought form in original substance ultimately will lead to the manifestation of what it was that you thought about and felt. Okay. Man's and women, we people, are a thinking center and can originate thought. Okay. The formless substance itself is not originate thought. It receives thought from us. It also receives thought from, you could refer to him or her however you like, but God. Myself personally, these are my beliefs. I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I'm not saying that you will agree with me, okay? But I'll put this out there right now. If you agree, terrific. If you don't, you could stick with us because you don't have to actually agree for this to work. Or you could say, I disagree, and you can leave. But these are my thoughts and my feelings. I personally believe there's a difference, and this is where it gets confusing for people, maybe in the law of attraction, between God and the universe, okay, when we refer to the universe. The universe is a bunch of stuff. It's energy, okay? It's been referred to as energy, referred to as matter. In this book, it's referred to as thinking stuff or original substance. However, it does not think, it receives thought and acts on that thought. And really what it receives is a vibration from us. And then it goes about trying to match that vibration for us, okay? God, again, my personal opinion, I believe, is someone very much like we are. However, he's already walked the walk. He's already been through a life very similar to ours. And He has learned how to think correctly, even though, and I don't know how long it took him. Okay. No idea. I believe we're going to live after this life on earth anyway. So I don't know how long it's going to take us to master everything. But what has happened is God has mastered his thoughts and feelings in such a way that the energy, the matter, the formless substance, the thinking stuff responds to God instantaneously when he desires, because he has no doubts, no fears, no disbelief. He 100% knows that when he puts out the right thoughts and feelings, and when he obeys the additional laws that already exist, by learning how to do that, he now was able to create an earth for us to live on. Okay. And a lot of other things that he's done. And really, when I say create, maybe a better word might be organize. I believe that because of my belief, I believe that we're going through a very similar process that he's already been through. And yes, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that we'll wish we hadn't done. However, because he has control ultimately over what's going on with our particular planet, he's going, and is, no matter how tough things might seem, we're going to continue to live. And we're going to have the opportunity to learn from our mistakes and from the things that we've done incorrectly. As we get better and better and better at this, we're going to become better and better at only thinking that which brings us what we really want. And we will quit fighting other people for what we want, because we won't be afraid that we can't receive what we want. We'll know that we'll be able to attract into our life everything we want, so that we can become all that we can become, so that we can do all that we truly want to do, and so that we can have all that we want to have. And we can do it in such a way that we don't have to harm anybody else to receive it. God's figured that out. We're in the process of it. I know that that's what we're going through right now, is a learning process. And at some point, it doesn't even matter how long from now it is. Okay. I don't know if we're in, nursery. I don't know if we're in elementary school. I don't know if we're in junior high, high school, or college, as far as our progression goes in learning these things and following them. I just know this: once we get to the point where we are thinking and emanating vibration the way God does, then we'll have the type of results that he does. In the meantime, though, that doesn't mean that we are not the ones who bring into our life the things that come into our life. They still come into our life the same way they would come into God's life. We're still that, for lack of a better term, that God in embryo. We are still that intelligence like God is. And the original stuff, thinking stuff, matter, energy, whatever you want to call it, still responds to what we put out. And if we put out crap, whether we're trying to or not, we get crap back. We put out good, whether we're trying to or not, we get good back. And we'll have a chance to discuss some of these things in a little bit, but I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. And again, if you agree with me, great. If you don't, no problem. Okay. Man is a thinking center and can originate thought. All the forms that man fashions with his hands must first exist in his thought. He cannot shape a thing until he has thought that thing. And so far as man has confined his efforts wholly to the work of his hands, he has applied manual labor to the world of forms, seeking to change or modify those already existing. He's never thought of trying to cause the creation of new forms by impressing his thought upon formless substance. When man has a thought form, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which is in his mind. He has so far made little or no effort to cooperate with the formless intelligence, to work with the Father. He has not dreamed that he can do what he seeth the Father doing. Man reshapes and modifies existing forms by manual labor. He has given no attention to the question whether he may not produce things from formless substance by communicating his thoughts to it. We propose to prove that he may do so, to prove that any man or woman may do so, and to show how. And our first step, we must lay down three fundamental propositions. First, we assert that there is one original formless stuff or substance from which all things are made. All the seemingly many elements are but different presentations of one element. All the many forms found in organic and inorganic nature are but different shapes made from the same stuff. And for those of you that are scientists at the subatomic level, that's true. And this stuff is thinking stuff. A thought held in it produces the form of the thought. And again, it's not as simple as just thinking something for a second, okay? There's more to it. But in essence, that's what happens. Thought in thinking substance produces shapes. That's how God works with it. Man is a thinking center, capable of original thought. If man can communicate his thought to original thinking substance, he can cause the creation or formation of the thing he thinks about. To summarize this, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. It may be asked if I can prove these statements, and without going into details, I answer that I can do so, both by logic and experience. Reasoning back from the phenomena of form and thought, I came to one original thinking substance. And reasoning forward from this thinking substance, I come to man's power to cause the formation of the thing he thinks about. And by experiment, I find the reasoning true. And this is my strongest proof. If one man or woman who reads this book gets rich by doing what it tells him or her to do, that is evidence in support of my claim. But if every person who does what it tells them to do gets rich, that is positive proof until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory is true until the process fails, and this process will not fail. For every person who does exactly what this book tells them to do will get rich. I have said that men get rich by doing things in a certain way. And by the way, there's more discussion as we go on what that is, but I'll simply say this. It's by obeying the laws of the universe. And in the future, we will go into some of that, not just in this book, but in some of our discussions together. There is definitely more than strictly the law of attraction, which is operating in our life, that we can utilize to help us receive what we want in our life. Okay. So I have said that men get rich by doing things in a certain way. And in order to do so, men must become able to think in a certain way. A man's way of doing things is the direct result of the way he thinks about things. To do things in a way you want to do them, you'll have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step toward getting rich. Let me repeat this. To do things in a way you want to do them, you'll have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. And actually, you're able. So the better way to say it is you're going to have to learn how to use your innate ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step toward getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth regardless of appearances. Let me repeat that. To think what you want to think is to think truth regardless of appearances. We'll get deeper into this so you'll understand better what that means. Every man has the natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think. But it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearance is easy. To think truth, regardless of appearance, is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work man or woman is called upon to perform. That's why you got to learn how to do it and why it's not necessarily natural. We're natural manifestors, but we've been programmed, unfortunately, almost since birth by everyone and everything around us to think everything, only what is what we can see, hear, taste, tell, and smell and touch. Because of that, we don't tend to think that we can create what we want. We don't tend to think necessarily that we actually make things happen in the sense that we can attract things. We think that everything is action based. And yes, you do have to act, okay? But we think that there are limitations that really don't exist. And the reason we think those limitations exist is because we are using our senses, and we're using what everybody has programmed us with, what everybody says about things, instead of learning how God actually works and how he does things. And I believe God's saying, hey, look, it's time now, guys, my children, however he sees us or she sees us, or however you believe God to be, wants us to learn to do things better the way that he does them. And in order to do that, we don't have to run around the earth with our heads like chickens with our heads cut off, working our butts off to try and be successful. But we have to change the way we think. And it's going to be more work than whatever physical labor you probably already do. The reason it's laborious is you're just not used to it. But it will become second nature for you eventually. When I say eventually, I'm not talking decades from now. I'm talking maybe days, weeks, months, maybe a few years. But by working on this and learning how this works, it will definitely, in the long run, make your life a lot easier. So let me repeat a little bit of this. To think according to appearance is easy. Whatever we can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. To think truth regardless of appearances is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work man is called upon to perform. There is no labor from which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. And I would have to agree with that. In the world we live in, we jump around a lot, right? Heck, on TV, how many channels do we have? On Netflix, how many movies or shows do we have to choose from? Hop on the internet and Google something, how many choices do we have? We don't spend a lot of time focused on much of anything in this world any longer. And that gets in the way of us actually manifesting what we want in our life. It makes it more difficult. However, we can learn to stay focused on what it is that we want and manifest what we want in this world. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world, those things we can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, whatever. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it. So we observe something, it puts that in our mind, right? And this can only be prevented by holding to the thought of the truth. Huh? I thought that was the truth. To look upon, and here's the truth, to look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your own mind and ultimately in your body, unless you hold to the truth. What is the truth? What you want to be the truth, what you want to actually have manifest, because either thing can manifest, the bad or the good. And it did manifest already because of what you've been thinking and feeling. So you've got to change what you've been thinking and feeling in order to manifest the opposite of what you currently have in order for things to get better. Okay. So let's see. To look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your own mind and ultimately in your body, unless you, you hold the thought of the truth, which is that there is no disease. It is only an appearance. The reality is health. To look upon the appearance of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your own mind, unless you hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there is only abundance. To think health when surrounded by appearances of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of appearances of poverty, requires power. But he or she who acquires this power becomes a master mind, meaning you have mastery over your thoughts and your feelings. Okay. He or she can conquer fate. He or she can have whatever he or she wants. This power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact which is behind all appearances. And that fact is that there is one thinking substance from which and by which all things are made. Then we must grasp the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form, and that a man or woman can so impress their thoughts upon it as to cause them to take form and become visible things. When we realize this, we lose all doubt and fear, for we know that we can create what we want to create. We can get what we want to have and can become what we want to be. As a first step toward getting rich, you must believe the three fundamental statements given previously in this chapter, and in order to emphasize them, I repeat them here. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. You must lay aside all other concepts of the universe than this monistic one, and you must dwell upon it until it is fixed in your mind and becomes your habitual thought. Read these creed statements over and over again. Fix every word upon your memory and meditate upon them until you firmly believe what they say. If doubt comes to you, cast it aside as a sin. And the definition of sin, okay, is maybe not what you think. Cast it aside. If it doesn't bring you what you want, then that would be it. If doubt comes to you, just cast it aside because it's not going to bring you what you want. Do not listen to arguments against this idea. Do not go to churches or lectures where a contrary concept of things is taught or preached. Do not read magazines or books which teach a different idea. If you get mixed up in your faith, all your efforts will be in vain. Do not ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply take them on trust. The science of getting rich begins with the absolute acceptance of this faith. And the cool thing is there are ways to experiment with this and watch it work. All right, increasing life. I'm going to stop here and come off a screen share. And hello, hello. A few more people have joined us since we started. Yep. Okay. Well, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you all here and glad to be sharing with you today. What I'd like to do at this point is based upon what we've been reading, what I've been sharing with you guys. Any thoughts, feelings, or questions, ahas, or maybe even your own personal experiences with working with the law of attraction or possibly having read this book before. Anyhow, I'm going to kind of leave it open since we're getting started and we're getting to know each other and we're newer with this together. But I just want to leave it open right now for anybody to, again, share any comments, questions, experiences, maybe even what it is that you would like to, learn as a result of coming together and doing this. So if
Kevin,
you'd like to do that.
Can I jump in?
You're welcome to. Hi.
Hi, I'm Bob. Nice to meet you, Kevin, everyone. It's funny. I've read this probably 10 years ago and it didn't resonate. And in the last couple of years, it started to click for me. And one thing I find is that if I'm around people who believe in abundance, the abundance manifests itself more powerfully than when I'm in a room where I'm the only person who believes that it's possible. And it's as if it becomes exponential, that we feed each other on some, I don't know, molecular spiritual level, and it jacks things up, which is what drew me to this group. It's like, boy, if you could get a group of 20, 30, 50, 100 people together, all believing this, and we all believe it for each other and ourselves, there's no limit to what we can achieve.
Hey, thanks for those comments. And that's essentially why I named the group what I named it and put it out there with the way I put it out there. I've been coaching people in different ways, shapes, or forms, specifically law of attraction, just a few years. But I've been a business coach. I've been a business consultant. I've helped a lot of other people in relationship to investing and entrepreneurship and things like that. And the number one thing I found with the people that succeed is simply the first start to it is actually believing that it's okay to have a lot of money, actually believing it's okay to be wealthy. If that is in the way, that's the first thing that has to get out of the way. If the belief is that money is bad or rich people are bad, then that is going to be the number one thing that gets in somebody's way, no matter how they work or how good their system for business is. Or they will have some success without being reprogrammed correctly, and then they'll go sabotage themselves afterwards. They'll hit a high, and they'll have a pretty good crash going on. And I'm not talking about the typical things of just being the entrepreneur life, okay, that's going to happen from time to time. But I'm talking about where there's this feeling inside at a subconscious level that I'm not supposed to have this. I'm not worthy. This is bad. Money's bad. Rich people are bad. If that's our thought, we're in trouble. Now, that doesn't make you a bad person if that's your thought. However, what we need to do, if that is kind of your thought, if that's your background, it was mine for certain, that we've got to come to a point where we go, you know what, let's find out what's real. Let's find out what's true. And let's find out what money really is. And I'd like to put it this way to everybody. We all have the inner urge to progress. If we're not progressing, we're typically not happy. Okay. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to strictly be money and finances, but we're designed to improve. We're designed to move forward. We're designed to be, do, and have more than we had when we came to this planet. Okay. And it's just natural. It's not going to go away. We're not going to achieve some plateau and be like, I'm all good. It's not how we were designed. We've got, like, again, my personal belief is we're learning how to do things the way God does them. And we're a long, long, long ways from making that happen. But we're put here on a planet right now to learn some of those lessons and move on to whatever our next step is in the process. That being said, money and wealth are simply a way to have the use of things. You go into the previous chapters, you'll get that. We need the use of certain things in order to develop ourselves. If anybody on here is like into instruments or a particular sport or whatever, or you have children that, wanted to learn an instrument or play a sport or do a particular hobby that costs money, well, first of all, if you had the ability to afford that for your family, terrific. But if that person who was gifted naturally with a particular talent didn't have the use of a piano, for instance, if they were going to become a piano player, how many people out there could have been Mozart but never really got the chance to play around with the piano? We don't know. But if they don't have the piano, they're not going to become Mozart, okay? Whether they could or not. And if you don't have a piano, you need to be able to buy one in order to practice doing that, or you need to have the use of one. At least your neighbor has to have one. Somebody somewhere had to lay down some money in order to get a piano. Somebody bought that first piano from somebody, no matter how many times it got passed along or used or resold to anybody. But without the use of the piano, that person can't become an amazing concert pianist, even if they had the ability to do so, because they can't go practice, right? So that's why they want the money. That's why we want money, is because there are things we know that we can become, that we need money. We need to have the use of things in order to progress. There are things that we want to do that we can't do without money, because we have to be able to pay for things, or at least be able to rent things from someone who has it, that will exchange the use of their thing for the money that we're willing to give them. And that's how society works now. Once upon a time, we exchanged chickens for rice or what, I don't know, right? That's just how it was, but that's not the world we live in. So if we look at money as a tool, as a means of exchange to help us develop and be all that we can be, do all that we truly want to do and we're designed to do, and have all the things we want to have. And by the way, we don't all want the same things, and that's cool too. Okay. There's a generalness of what we all want. But as far as specifics, we'd want different things. And that's what makes the world fun and interesting and allows us to all do different types of things. But if we don't have money to do it, and we think wealth and riches are a bad thing, we're going to have a tough time becoming what we have. And that's why we feel bad. We don't feel bad because we have of lack of money, we feel bad because we can't be, do, and have what we want to be, do, or have. If we had the ability as younger kids, if you come from a family that is pretty well off, they don't have that concern about money, right? Their concern comes later when either they have to take care of themselves or whatever. But the point is, if we don't have to think about these things and we can naturally have all we have to unfold ourselves, that would be awesome. Hey, somebody's typing something in the chat, but anyhow, thank you. Any other questions or comments or insights anybody would like to share?
I am more interested. Hi, my name is PJ Smith. I'm
Hi,
a
PJ.
commercial realtor.
Okay.
I'm interested in this change of thought process
Okay.
because I guess over the years, you take in the various companies that I've worked for, you take these, and they call it aptitude. They call personality tests to find out what kind of personality you are, and people that do deep thought. I always wind up in the snap judgment quadrant of somebody that looks at something and then they can see the answer right away and makes that snap judgment, and that's not always 100% correct. So I'm interested in how this author changes the way people think.
Awesome. Well, we're not very far into it. So first of all, we're in the very leading part of the book. It's not a long book, but we're in the very beginnings of it. So I have a lot of additional material around it to work on later on if we want to. And I would say that if you want a quick overview of the book, if you read quick, great, is you can go to YouTube very easily, type in Science of Getting Rich, and you can find it on audio. And it'll play for about 2 hours and 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's like 2 hours, 15 minutes long, which you guys are totally obviously welcome to do whatever you want, but you could go through that whole thing even before we come back tomorrow if you felt like it and get kind of an overview. Here's what I would recommend though. Suspend your disbelief for now. Suspend any judgment that you can for the moment. And let's try and put these things into practice. That's what had to happen for me, is because I was very focused prior to learning these things. I always wanted to know how to do things. And funny enough, real estate was one of those. Okay. How to be a real estate investor, how to run a business, how. And I did many of those things, but I wasn't having the success that I wanted. And what I didn't realize at the time was that the thoughts and feelings and emotions I had around those things were actually keeping me from succeeding on the how side of what I was doing. Everyone has one of these, so I'll point this one out. Every one of us has a financial thermostat, okay, currently, but where it's set is different for all of us, but we do have it. The reason I say that is there's probably some millionaires on here, and there are probably some people on here that have never made more than $20,000, $30,000 in a year, and everything in between. And if our programming, it's not our profession necessarily, although our profession can help. In commercial real estate, for instance, the ability to make a good amount of money exists. But does everybody make the same amount of money? No. Does everybody succeed with it? Not necessarily, but does everybody have the same possibility to do it, utilizing the how to be successful as a commercial broker or investor? Yeah, absolutely. Anybody could learn it. Most people won't. And then some people in the same business are going to make way more money and do better than others. And people are going to be happy at different levels too. But we do have that thermostat in there, and our thermostat, like the one in our house, will keep us at a particular temperature unless we learn how to reprogram and change the thermostat. For instance, I'm over in Southern California right now, San Diego area. The heat's not on. Okay.
Is it ever?
Hardly. Nor is the air conditioner on a whole lot. Okay. But there are times when it is. So I just set a program, leave it alone, and I trust it's going to do its thing. And what happens for us, we do like things cooler. So we moved here from Arizona, where it was hotter in the Phoenix area. And so we keep our temperature in the winter. We're not going to have the heat come on until about 67 or 8. And in the summer, we're going to have the AC. It'll come on actually pretty quick if it gets anything over about 74. We like to keep it in that high 60, low 70 range all the time. That's part of why we moved here. Is we want the outside to be that way too. Though, yesterday, actually, we had a storm kind of roll in and had the windows open and everything. It got pretty cold in here. Now we heard the heat wanted to kick on. We wouldn't stop that. We just shut the door because it's like we have no need to do that. But the thermostat wanted to. Why? Because it was programmed to keep it between those temperatures. Well, financially, we have a thermostat that wasn't set necessarily by us, but we do have one in there. And if we want to, it'll bring us and equalize us out. If we happen to have a really good year without changing our program and our thermostat, and let's say we make $150,000 on average commercial, I don't know what you're making, $150,000 a year on average, and the following year you're up at 2.25. Okay. If you haven't changed your programming and your belief system in your programming says, no, you're a $150,000 earner, chances are the following year you'll either be back at 150, or unfortunately you'll drop to maybe 120, 125, 90,000. Why? Because your thermostat over time is trying to equal you out to what it sees you as. It's your own self-image. And that's where your thermostat's programmed. What I've realized and had to learn was I was set programmed at about $60,000 to $75,000 a year. This goes years back before I learned this stuff. But once I learned what was going on, I was able to reprogram myself to where instead of working 50, 60 hours a week and making $5,000 to $6,000 a month, I only worked 15 to 20 hours a week and I averaged $50,000 a month. That wasn't because I changed or I got a better profession or whatever. That's because I changed my program, and that change of program automatically led me to go do things that would actually create that temperature. That's how it ended up working for me. And that's how I've seen it work for many other, well, it is how it does work. We can go work our butts off to make more money or be more successful. But if our self-image, if our thermostat is set at a certain place, we are going to really struggle to do it. So we have to reprogram ourselves. What Wallace Wattles is trying to do through this book in the first couple, 2-3 chapters is try and say, hey, look, everybody, you got to be rich. And you have to be okay with the idea of being rich, or the rest of what I teach you isn't going to help very much. Because I'm going to ask you to see yourself differently than you see yourself right now. And how do I know it's going to be different than how you see yourself right now? Because you're trying to be, do, and have more than you already have been able to accomplish to this point. So that's why it is so important. And it's a tough thing for a lot of people because it's just old programs, it's old thermostats and programs running in the background that get in our way. I was learning about real estate and entrepreneurship years before, and then boom, I jumped literally in 3 months. My income, boom, in 3 months, it jumped significantly. I didn't learn that much more in 3 months than I'd known before as far as how to run a business and how to succeed with real estate. What I did, though, is I learned how I worked better and what was going on inside my head and how I was functioning and how I was attracting or repelling what it was that I wanted. So that's what I'm here for, is to help you guys with that. And that's what hopefully we can do collectively and share with each other. I know we're over by a few minutes. Here's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to